Hello everyone. Welcome. And my name is Kubra Zengin, and I'm the North America Regional Lead for Google Developer Groups and Women Tech Makers programs at Google. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome again to the Elevate with Google Developers. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat like we always do. So we would love to know where you are joining from today. So with that said, I would like to kick it off with an introduction again to the Elevate with Google Developers. So Elevate is a full-year applied skills program that we are hosting with great speakers on a monthly basis on the themes of how to transition to a new career, how to grow your career, and how to grow yourself as a professional. If you already watched all of the sessions, that's great. If you haven't, you can just find all of our sessions previously on our YouTube channel. Within those themes, we touched on communication skills, leadership skills, negotiation, and so on. We only have now like 2 months left, November and December. And feel free to check out the agenda for the rest of the year. So we will actually remind you if you sign up on our website too. But for more information, feel free to go to the website and then just check out all of the topics specifically. With every session, you can incorporate your learnings to your professional career and then take it to the next level with some workshops and presentations that we are having throughout the year. We are thrilled that you could just join us for all of the sessions today, and we hope you all benefit from the content. So, housekeeping for today. As this is a great guideline for all of our events, I would like to remind all of you that let's just be excellent to each other. So if you want to just learn more about the community guidelines, you can just check out on our website or the links we share on the screens. And secondly, I will add your questions to the chat. While our speaker is just presenting, you can just add your questions. We will answer in a timely manner, one by one in line. So just make sure, you just ask a lot of questions, and then we will have a Q&A session after the presentation. And lastly, we are here to help actually with your other questions too. So if you have any, things that you are wanting to ask about Elevate in general, you can share with us at elevate-team@google.com. All right, let's get it started. Today's session, again, we'll start with a presentation followed by a Q&A session, like I said. And you can ask your questions during the presentation on the comments section. And now I'm going to welcome our amazing speaker today. Without further ado, Karoline O'Sullivan will be joining us from Google today to speak about storytelling. So I'm really excited about this session, actually. And then maybe we should just welcome her. Welcome, Karoline.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing really well. It's a real pleasure to be joining you today. I'm dialing in from Dublin, where the sun is already setting here beside me. It's a pretty miserable evening, so I'm feeling really excited about spending my evening with you. I'd love to know if you can pop in the chat how you're feeling about joining the talk today and how you're feeling about this topic. And I can see that we have people joining in from lots of different states and a few different countries, but tell me, how are you feeling? Are you excited? Are you energized? How are you feeling about being in the talk? Now, my guess is really that you joined the talk because you've recognized the value of developing your storytelling skills. And I'm going to guess that it's not, this is not the first talk that you have attended on storytelling, and nor will it be your last, because you've realized that this is a skill that can be developed and crafted and honed by bringing lots of different techniques together and playing with them in different ways that work for you, in a way that works for your stories, and a way that works for your voice. So my promise is that by the end of this talk, you will have 3 more techniques. 3 techniques that will help you to elevate your story, your voice, and your storytelling skills to a new level. So being able to tell your story, whether it's a business story or a personal story, it's a really important skill and need that everyone, I believe, deserves to have. Because telling your story in a way that brings you alive, in a way that makes you feel really proud, is a hugely rewarding feeling of being seen. And what greater feeling really is there than that? So I'm going to ask you to start by getting some focus. I want you to grab a pen and a piece of paper and write down why you joined this talk today. I joined this talk today because. You need to write down that sentence and complete it. You can also put it into the chat box if you like, but this is more just a personal reflection. I joined this talk today because. And when you've done that, I want you to go to the second sentence. What I hope to get out of this time is, and think on that for a few moments as well. Because wherever you are, whatever states and countries you're listening across from or watching from, having a focus as to why you're here and what you hope to get out of it will help you get the most out of our time together. So I joined today because of the satisfaction and sense of accomplishment that I get from helping others to develop. I love developing myself, and I love helping others to develop. It's a really important value to me, and one that luckily I'm greatly energized by, because I'm endlessly drawn to opportunities to help others to develop. As for what I hope to get out of the time, I want to understand better what your questions are, what your ideas and perspectives are when it comes to storytelling, so that I can constantly improve my content, or if it's a new idea, a new angle that I haven't considered before, I can go away and do my own research as well, and also continue to grow. So with that bit, I'm going to need your help. And when we get to the Q&A section later on, I'm going to ask you just to get really involved and really to show up and open up and share your questions so we can have a great conversation together. So I have been performing, singing, acting, or teaching performance, or speaking as a professional in one way or another for the best part of 20 years. After I completed my degree in drama and theatre studies, I went on to train as a speech and drama teacher, and then an English language teacher. I then spent the next 10 years or so working as a performer and a facilitator, until I switched from the arts role and moved over to the corporate world. And now at Google, I MC client events, I facilitate trainings, and I coach other speakers. But one thing that I've always been interested in, whether in the arts or in the corporate world, is figuring out those speakers who draw us in. Those speakers who seem to have some skill or magic to captivate us. So a lot of what you're going to hear today is a blend of those years of practical experience and watching and learning from others. So with these speakers, these performers who draw us in, what is it about them? Is it their words, their movement, their passion, their rehearsal techniques? What are they playing around with? And in what order? And have I tried it that way yet? Now, so all of this that you're going to hear from is about all of this kind of experience, this constant questioning that I've been playing around with. What I'd like you to do now is to take a moment to consider someone who you regard as a great speaker. Maybe it's someone who excels on stage, or someone who on a panel manages to somehow be both eloquent and succinct at the same time. And once you have the person in mind, I want you to ask yourself, were they born that way? Of course not. But do they have a natural talent that I don't have? Maybe they do. Okay? However, does that mean that you'll never be as great a speaker as they are? Definitely not. Of course not. Once you start to see past the charm and the technique, you're going to realize that there are different the charm and the charisma, you're going to start to see the techniques that are at play there. So these might be techniques that are not very conscious for some speakers, but once you start to see them, you'll start to understand that you too can develop them and create the same kind of charisma and charm on stage too. So I mentioned earlier that this probably isn't your first talk, and nor should it be your last either, because there's so many techniques that you can learn from watching speakers and taking classes like this. But what I want to share with you now are 3 techniques that I think will give you the best return for your time, and 3 techniques that will help you to in both your public speaking life and in your personal life. They are having a framework to structure your ideas, learning how rhetorical devices move your audience, and developing a strong sense of being grounded and connected to the moment. And we're going to look at each of these in turn. So let's look at having a framework. So many years ago, I taught English as a foreign language. And because I was with my theatre background, the principal decided that I should teach the beginners. She thought that the drama games that I would bring to the class could be a nice way for the students to become more familiar with the language. This is perfect for me because I can admit this now, but not at the time. English grammar was, I was a bit of a beginner there too. So we faced it together, the students and I, through these drama games. And things were going really well. And a few months into the term, I decided I wanted to sit down with each of my students and to learn a bit more about why they were there, what areas of my teaching worked for them, what styles and techniques didn't, and to learn anything from them that would help me to be a better teacher to them. And this is a long time ago. I don't remember the conversations, but one. I just remember one, and I remember it so vividly. A lovely young Portuguese boy is sitting in front of me. He's so eager, but he's so frustrated. And he smiles and he sighs and he stands up and he walks out. And he walks up to the door up behind me on the left. And there I can hear him asking some questions in Portuguese. And he comes back over and he sits down and he sighs and he says, "Teacher, know where start." And I still feel so much for him, even now when I remember that day, because we've all been there. We've all had so many experiences where you just don't know where to start. We've had challenges and expectations, even hopes and dreams piling up around us, demanding something from us, ideas in our heads, demanding to be let out, but we just don't know where to start. So my student, what he had to realize was that he could only start where he was. He had to allow himself to be a beginner. He had to allow the wrong words to come out, sentences to come out backwards, and things not to be perfect. And it's the same when you're creating your content. You have to let that first draft come out of you. But even at that, how do you get it out of you? So that's where frameworks come to the fore. I've tried lots of different frameworks, as I'm sure you have too, but the one that I keep turning back to is Michael Verardi's STIR method. Michael is a public speaker and a storyteller, a wonderful person. I came across this method when I took his course, Stand Up, Stand Out, after he spoke at Google a few years ago. And the reason I keep going back to Michael's content is, and the reason I want to share it with you now is because it's so accessible and it's just consistently reliable. And no matter how lost at sea I feel with my ideas, his method really helps to anchor me. No matter how I feel like I don't know where to start, the STIR method is my anchor. I use it almost every time I have to write, even if it's just to get those initial thoughts on the page, and then I might rearrange them later. So I'm going to take you through it now. So here it is in its entirety. You've got the statement, the think through, where you elaborate on the statement. Then you illustrate the statement with data or quotes or demonstration or the use of analogy. And then you restate a version of your opening statement. We're going to look at each of these in turn. So you'll have your opening statement. Let's say it's something like, storytelling is the most powerful tool to reach your audience. Then you must help your audience to think through this statement. You could say something like, storytelling is one of the oldest forms of communication. As we see ourselves and our hopes and our fears reflected in the characters, we form a connection with both the story and the storyteller. This connection builds trust and affiliation. So now you've helped them to think through your opening statement. This alone isn't enough. You need to illustrate what you've said to really help the audience to understand, connect with, and easily recall your point of view. You could say something like, one of the most valuable aspects of storytelling is how much easier it is to recall than lists of facts and figures. In fact, researchers Chip Heath and Dan Heath tell us that after a presentation, 63% of attendees remember stories. Only 5% remember statistics. And then finally, you restate your key message to help it stick. If you really want to reach your audience, to connect with them, to build trust, use storytelling. So it's pretty simple, right? I use the STIR method when planning my whole speech, and then again in each sections of the speech. Now, you might have noticed in this particular section of the speech, where I'm talking about frameworks, I illustrated first with the story of my determined and brave yet overwhelmed young language student. And to me, that's the real value of the STIR method, is the flexibility and creativity that the structure allows you. It's like Godard said, a story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, but not necessarily in that order. So I'd love you to try it out for some upcoming speech that you're going to make or preparation for a client meeting, anything where you think that you'll benefit from having a kind of a structure and a process through your thoughts. So that's the STIR method for you to reflect on for just a moment. The second skill that I want to take you through is learning to harness the power of rhetorical devices to move your audience. Always take the time to choose your words wisely. They have the power to move people or to bore them. I'm going to take you through what I find to be some of the most helpful devices. We're going to start with ethos, logos, and pathos. 3 words that you're likely familiar with, but are you really using them to your advantage? Ethos is used to establish your authority to speak on a subject. This authority tells the audience that you are knowledgeable and trustworthy. So I used ethos both in how I introduced myself earlier and when describing my use of the STIR method. Ethos can also arrive before you do. It can arrive in the form of your bio or how you are introduced. So always take the time to make sure that you're introduced in a strong way that shows your credentials and that you're not starting then on the back foot when you do come onto the stage. Then there's logos. This is where you appeal to reason. You give your listeners a logical thought pattern to follow. You could do so by citing some data or demonstrating a clear flow of cause and effect in your content. Referencing relevant historical events is also another way to use some logos in your speech. You could also argue that metaphors and analogies are logos in action. The STIR method is an example of logos in action. It's anything that makes your content easier to understand. So whether you're using citing data or you're using an analogy, it'll all depend on your audience, who of course you have to know your audience. And then finally, there's pathos. This is used when you want to appeal to the emotions of your listeners. And you always want to appeal to the emotions of your listeners. Remember what we said earlier through the STIR method about storytelling bringing people together to form trust and affiliation? That's pathos in action. Pathos can actually also come when you're speaking on a topic that you're really passionate about, something that lifts your energy and makes your eyes sparkle. So either find what that topic is or find the why behind your topic. So if you're going into a meeting to ask for more budget, like maybe talking about budget doesn't make your eyes sparkle, okay? And that's fair enough. But why do you need the budget? What's your connection to that? And does that make your eyes spark? Does that lift your energy? Because that will bring your pathos across as well. And that passion will help you to win over the audience. Sometimes people ask me what the balance should be between ethos, logos, and pathos. I would say start by having at least one example of each, one solid example. You're already doing really well. And then you consider your audience. For example, do they come from a culture where logic and reasoning are the bedrock of their educational system? If that's the case, then maybe you need to cite more data or show that cause and effect, having more of that in your speech. But maybe the goal of your talk is to increase funding for a non-profit that you support. So in this case, you'd want to find a connection between your listeners, between your audience of potential donors and the people that your cause supports. So you need to increase the pathos in that example. So if this is as far as you take your rhetorical devices, you're already doing great. There's a few more that I want to share with you, but we'll just pause there for a second to allow you to soak in or maybe jot down a question for later on the value of using ethos, logos, and pathos. Now, though, there's three more that I want to share with you. And when I do, you're going to start to see them everywhere. They are allusion, anaphora, and pacing. Allusion is when you refer directly or indirectly to something that will be familiar to your listeners. A place, a historical event, a piece of literature, a movie, a myth, a poem, a TV show even. Done well, allusion adds color and context for your listeners. We actually use allusions very often in our everyday conversations. We admit to hitting the snooze button as being our Achilles heel, or we salute people with, "May the 4th be with you" on the 4th of May. Allusions are your way of telling the audience a little bit more about you. Done well, they help your audience to see a little bit more of themselves in your content. You allude to a movie, the audience thinks, oh, I like that movie too. So they now feel a little bit more connected with each other. This brings you, them, and the content closer together. So let's move on to Anaphora. Anaphora is the repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or sentences. This type of repetition, it can give a real strong sense of power and urgency to what you're saying. It can also add a certain style to your delivery, or it can simply serve as an anchor for your listeners, making it easier for them to understand and recall your content. Anaphora links ideas for your listeners, and it's a very effective device when arguing a point home. If you want to see a great example of the repeated use of anaphora for motivating an audience, I strongly encourage you to print off a copy of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech and see how much he uses so many rhetorical devices, but in particular anaphora, and how well it works to move you as a reader and listener. The final rhetorical device I want to encourage you to use is pacing. So managing the speed of delivery and comprehension. So some people only think of pacing in regard to their delivery, but you can actually think about it much sooner than that. You can consider pacing when you're putting your words on paper, and consider how this pacing will help the tone once I do go to deliver my speech. So how do you do that? When I'm looking to add or play around with some color and variety to my pacing, I rely on conjunctions. Words such as and, but, or, nor. So consider the difference between these two sentences. I have everything ready for the party. Balloons, streamers, paper cups, cakes, drinks, even a clown. And I have everything ready for the party. Balloons and streamers and paper cups and cakes and drinks, even a clown. So yes, my tone is very different in both. But can you hear how adding in the conjunctions supports my tone in the second one? It slows it down, it supports that weight and the more serious tone that I'm trying to get across. So omitting conjunctions gives a sense of urgency or excitement. Balloons, streamers, paper cups, cakes, drinks, even a clown. Using conjunctions gives a sense of weight and importance. Balloons and streamers and paper cups and cakes and drinks, even a clown. The really interesting part, of course, is when you mix the two of them together. For example, you could give a long list of items without any conjunctions and then add them back in to build in some focus, to sum up your points. And when you do that, that change in rhythm, it's a message to your listeners to lean in and to focus a little bit more. So there you have the rhetorical devices: ethos, logos and pathos, allusion, anaphora and pacing. These are just the beginning. There are so many other rhetorical devices available to you, and I cannot overemphasize my encouragement for you to become more familiar with them and to use them every day. We know that words move people. Understanding rhetoric is to understand how they do that. So that's your second top technique for the day. Now finally, let's move on to talk about developing a strong sense of being grounded and connected to yourself and to the moment. We know that we're more likely to be at our best selves when we feel grounded in a strong sense of self. That grounding and connection help us to experience a sensation that is often referred to as being in a state of flow. Flow is often described as this elusive state that is mostly experienced when doing something you love or you believe that you're good at. But I actually think that it's far more accessible than that, and that it actually has more to do with how you see yourself. than with your relationship to the activity at hand. So anyone who has taken an acting class, or even better, an improv class, you're going to be familiar with some of the techniques that I'm going to share. But first, let me tell you about one of my experiences of being in a strong state of flow. I had been training as a classical singer for 7 years, doing weekly classes, practicing all my scales, you know the drill, doing competitions, passing my exams. And finally, the opportunity came for my first professional recital. And when I recall it, it still fills me with joy. I remember myself, I'm sitting backstage, I'm full of energy and an excitement, like it's just soaring through me. The wings are to my right, and I'm waiting for my cue. And when it comes, I turn around and I open those curtains wide, and I walk out strong and proud and present into the world of the character. And I'm there, I'm engaging with the other singers, I'm taking what they're giving me and I'm giving it out to the audience. I'm feeling very strong and playful and connected, and I'm milking that confidence for everything it's worth. And I can, because I'm there, I'm present, and I can see the opportunities and make the most of them. In the days that follow, that feeling stays with me. I'm playful and curious in situations where previously I would have been a little bit more shy. So what did I do differently this time? Of course, there was all the normal work, all the practicing my scales, repeating the technical parts of the song over and over again, knowing the lyrics backwards. But I would now refer to as surface work. But I also did a lot more deeper work, a lot of grounding and visualization work. And the result was not just a performance to be proud of from a technical point of view, but a vivid experience of being in a state of flow despite the high stakes. So let me share a little bit with you now about this grounding work in more detail. So the work that I did back then, and I still do now, involves coming into the present moment and heightening the sensation of connection between my feet and the floor below me. Then I imagine that the earth is keeping me safe. This is either through a complex root system that I can visualize moving fast and wrapping around itself in the earth and grabbing hold of giant boulders, or through a magnetic pull down into the earth. And I stay there with that connection for as long as I need to, for that feeling of strength and security to start to flow through me. From this stage, I then move into visualization. I will either visualize the entire performance, beginning to end, going perfectly, not just witnessing it, but experiencing it, experience the confident, playful, inquisitive version of myself being fully present on stage. Or I might visualize a color that I associate with what I'm trying to get across to the audience, the type of energy I'm trying to get across to them. And I will visualize that coming up through that complex root system I just described, hitting my feet, and I'll visualize it filling my body and then spreading out further beyond me. Other grounding work that you could do could be something like a body scan or some focused breath work, or maybe a visualization of how you feel after the performance might work for you. But all of these will help you to come into the present moment a little bit more. Now, in recent years, I've become more and more curious about why this deeper play works. My research brought me to the work of Amy Cuddy, the author of Presence. You may already be familiar with Amy and her name and her work, but if not, please remember who she is and check her out, because of all the speaker training techniques that you can learn, I think learning to harness the power of presence will give you the best return. Amy's research shows that in a pressure-filled situation, when we are distracted by thinking about possible outcomes of our performance, our skills are measurably diminished. So if I'm sitting here thinking, are they laughing at my jokes? Am I being clear enough? Or am I going to get this interview? Or am I going to pass this exam? If I'm distracted by that, my ability to perform well decreases. Being present allows you to respond to what is happening in the moment and use it to your advantage and to your audience's benefit. There's a great exercise in Amy Cuddy's book Presence that I'd like to share with you now. So you begin by defining a core value for you. Identifying one. It could be equity or fairness or empathy. And then you write about why that value is important to you and a time when you lived that value. And then you repeat that activity for anything that could be regarded as a stressful engagement. And the book cites at least 2 studies by David Cresswell and David Sherman, in which the participants were divided into 2 groups before performing a stressful task. Group A was asked to do the exercise, which I have just described. Group B was asked to write about any value at all, not one that they personally identified with. Afterwards, they were tested for increased levels of cortisol and adrenaline to measure how stressful they found the experience. In each study, the group who reflected on their personal values and how they lived those values showed lower levels of stress hormones after the task than the other group. So this indicates the power of knowing your worth and value way beyond the task at hand has a knock-on effect on your increased ability to do well at that task at hand by staying present. So I strongly encourage you to check out Amy's book and all of her online channels. Actors are also another great source of information when it comes to understanding presence. I used to joke around that I spent my 3-year acting degree learning how to walk around a room. But in learning how to walk around the room, I was learning to listen and respond with my whole body. So whether you call it personal connection, being grounded, presence, stage presence, I strongly recommend that you find a way to develop it that works for you. So there you have it. Here are my top 3 skills that I believe will give you the greatest reward for your time. 3 skills that will benefit you not just in your public speaking life, but in so many other aspects of your life. And 3 skills that will help you to tell your story in your voice. 1, having a framework to structure your ideas. 2, learning about those rhetorical devices and how they can move your audience. And 3, developing a strong sense of being grounded and connected to yourself in the moment. And then, once all that prep work is done, do your best to set it aside and to speak from the heart in the moment, and just let trust come through that everything that you've learned and practiced will just all come out in your speech. I'm really glad that you've been here and that I've been here with you, and I'm really glad to see how much you value developing your storytelling style and technique. So I'm excited to get stuck in now to a great discussion for the remainder of our time. I'd like to start off by just asking you, of the 3 techniques that I've shared, what one are you going to start with first? Are you going to look into trying out that framework? Are you going to maybe play around with some of the rhetorical devices? Or maybe just pick one of the rhetorical devices? And if so, which one are you going to try? Which one do you think will be best for you? Or maybe you're going to start by thinking about how you can develop this strong sense of being grounded and present and connected in the moment, to yourself and in the moment. So I'd love to hear what you're going to commit to. Great, we've got one person joining in. Susa, I will start looking at the STIR method. It's a great place to start. It's a great idea. It's really, really helpful to have that framework. Yeah, Francisco as well, just to get those ideas. There's nothing more terrifying than looking at a blank page, a head full of ideas and a blank page. So the STIR method is a great way to kick off. Number 3 for JC. Great. Also another great one, and one that really it benefits you in so many, many areas of your life. Okay. That's great. So I'm happy now to jump to some questions.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much, Karoline. And then this was a great, actually, like presentation full of with lots of tips and then tricks, like frameworks and things like that. So I'm looking at the actually comment section right now. If we have any questions, like I will just open up to the actually all the audience to just put their questions on the comment section, and then meanwhile maybe I can just ask my own personal questions to you. So I had too many questions in my mind, but I'm trying to pick which one actually would go first. Maybe I should start with the personal, storytelling. So for example, storytelling is of course like something that we need to just prepare ourselves and then get into the like mindset of just okay, like I'm going to do this type of things, and then like kind of study, right, like to get it properly. So I'm curious, like how would you describe the ones who are not even like who are, how can I say, natural to just have those storytelling traits, and then they don't have to even just prep themselves, and then like when like how can I say, how, or when we look at the people who are like studying and then getting prepped, like how do you find that difference? Is it like are we born into it, or is it just like they are already getting prepared, but like how do you find that difference between
I think I know what you're saying. So I would say that no one is born with this skill.
Okay.
Start. But we all have different experiences from the moment we're born, and we meet different people. So if you're lucky enough to have a parent or a grandparent who is a great natural storyteller, and you are soaking that up from from a very young age, you're going to have that more practice maybe than the rest of us. There could also be that type of person that is just so zen and so connected with who they are, and they just feel so safe in their sense of self, right? That also draws us in, and they're natural storytellers because they draw us in. Their energy draws us in, and that's what makes them a natural storyteller. So the first, but between the two of them, really though, they're both skills that can be learned. That sense of self can be learned from doing any of the exercises I described, or any kind of meditation, really, or a body scan, or if that's not your jam, just journaling, or a long hike, like a really long hike without a podcast, where you're just there with just you and your thoughts. Like all of that kind of sense of understanding who you are will also help you to tell better stories. And beyond that, then it's techniques. And yes, there are people who are brilliant and they don't know that they're using all these techniques.
Yeah.
But if you start to analyze them and peel off the layers, you'll see the techniques there.
Got it.
And you can use the techniques.
Do you think like this is related to confidence at some level too?
It can definitely be. I think the problem with confidence is, what it means to me could mean something completely different to you. And I think confidence can also be a little bit fleeting. I could feel confident one day and not so confident the next day and not know why, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you can do especially that exercise that I was describing from Amy Cuddy's book. And there's lots of other exercises in her book, so I really encourage you to check it out. They're about developing a strong sense of self. And I think if you can do that, that can help with those days when your confidence isn't so high. Or else there's also so much material and writing and listening that we can check out regarding challenging our saboteurs as well, challenging that negative voice. So all of that would help.
Perfect. Thank you. So we have some questions in line. So I'm really happy to just ask them one by one. So Francisco is asking, how can we practice and / develop storytelling skills before the big presentation? So kind of, I guess, the framework that you are sharing, but maybe a little bit elaboration on this one.
Yeah, sure. So practicing it before the presentation, that was it, wasn't it? So I can tell you what I do. I like to run, and when I'm running, I'll have a think about, like for this talk, for example, it's so much content. It's like a 3-hour course that I give at work. Thinking, how am I going to get it down to 30 minutes, 30, 40 minutes? I was thinking about this when I was out for my run, and that's where I get my ideas about how to kind of grab the audience, what kind of questions to ask the audience. That's where I got my idea about asking you to reflect on why you wanted to join. And then I reflected on why I wanted to join, and that started kind of helping me. That kind of got the ball rolling for me, brought in, that's when I suddenly remembered my student who I'd forgotten about. So I think finding something that is the place where your head is, you've got space, you've got some head space to let these ideas flow, and then ask yourself questions. So that's how I kind of get my stories going, and I practice remembering and recalling my stories. But then preparing for actually going on stage, I practice. And then maybe that's the actor in me. I was an actor for 10 years, so I perform the whole thing to an invisible audience in my living room. I imagine interjections and I respond to those interjections. I imagine things going wrong and I respond to it going wrong, just like you would when you're training as an actor. So for me, that's how it works best. You practice it, and also in practicing it, I come up with new ideas, and I remember new stories and new ways of trying things. So sometimes I'll try to have a pen and paper beside me while I'm practicing to jot down, ooh, that was a good sentence, and I'll write that one down.
Perfect. Yeah, it's just, I guess, practice. We can just summarize with one word. That's just, like come up with some scenarios in your head and then just, run it, right? Run the show in your head. So that will be helpful. Perfect. Thank you. So he's asking, any tips to help reduce or prevent freezing during a presentation? This is like literally what I'm experiencing sometimes too. So great question. What do you think, Karoline?
Yeah, this is a really hard experience. The really unfortunate thing to tell you, if you haven't experienced it yet, is everyone has to experience it once. Exactly. It happens to all of us. What I would, if that happens, what you need to do is acknowledge it. That's the first thing I would do. I completely lost my train of thought. Really sorry. What was the last thing I said? That's what I would do. And I've seen people do that, and the audience are just like, oh wow, they're so vulnerable. They love that you were so honest. So that's the first thing they would do, and the audience will tell you what you just said. You'd be like, oh yes, thank you. Okay, yes, I know where we are now. And make a little joke about it. You could say, oh God, the worst thing happened. I guess we're going to be okay now. So that's how I would handle it in the moment. In regards to reducing the likelihood that it's going to happen, I'd say think about the times it has happened and what was going on there. For me, there's the thing that was going on usually is that I wasn't present, and I didn't do any of the type of practice that I was describing earlier, like visualizing it going well, or if I wasn't believing it. My saboteur, right? That negative voice That had taken over. I had allowed my worst case scenario come to life. I gave it too much power before the event. So if you catch yourself visualizing that you freeze or you forget it, just like, stop it. Stop, Caroline. Stop. I hear you, saboteur. That's okay. We're going to be okay. Okay? We're doing this, so there's no need for you to be trying to scare me beforehand. And then try to focus on times you could do the exercise that I was describing about writing about your values. You could talk about times when you did really well in the past and try to remember that instead. Or you could just visualize it going well over and over again. But I think the tip is to watch out for that negative voice and for those negative, once those fears start taking over, you're kind of screwed. So you really have to make sure that they don't take over.
Yeah, I agree. The more you panic, the more actually it will, kind of go bad, I guess, so like negative thoughts. Definitely when you just, give yourself positive vibes, so that makes it even better when you are just on stage. So definitely I agree. So let's see. Francisco is asking, can you recommend good storytellers to follow? That's a good
Good
question.
storytellers to follow. Oh, I love that question. I don't know if I necessarily follow any particular storytellers. There's some, I more so follow speakers. And I'll follow, so I like to follow some politicians because often they don't necessarily write all of their speeches, okay, but they're usually brilliant storytellers. And brilliant at delivering their stories and landing points. So I like to follow them instead. Or Simon Sinek, I think that's his name, isn't it? He's another great, he's not necessarily a storyteller, like he's works in team culture, business culture, but he's another great speaker. So I just like to follow different speakers. So my advice would be watch a few videos online of speakers who you enjoy and analyze why you enjoy what they're doing. And then see, well, are they using Ethos Logos and Pathos? Are they using Anaphora? Are they, what other devices are they doing? What's with their pacing? Are they a good pacing or not? That's how I would do. And then you'll start finding people that you like, Francisco. That's the most important thing, that their speakers, that their style connects with you.
Yeah. Perfect. I, by the way, usually just watch TED videos like for these, like practices. So maybe you can find, good storytellers just on TED videos too. Sometimes, you just run into. So that might be something too.
Absolutely.
So we have another question. How can we apply this to interviews when you have limited time to share your background? So this is an amazing question, actually. I love it.
So how can you apply this? I'm not sure what the person means, what you mean by this exactly, JC, but I'll try to answer it. I would say, first of all, let's look at the STIR method. You can apply that to all of your answers that you're preparing for interview questions. And then in there, you within your answers, you can start adding in, for sure, lots of ethos. Your authority to speak on this subject, your trustworthiness and your knowledge. Definitely get those in there. Maybe if you're going for a managerial role, you might want to have lots of pathos as well. Talk about your team, how your team contributed, how you brought your team forward, and tell that story. And then this other skills, like the presence and the being grounded, that's going to just come through. So what I would say, JC, is before your next interview, that you're in the room next door, ask the recruiter just to give you, stand outside, give you 2 minutes and stand there and do one of those grounding exercises that works for you. And that's what you're spending your last 2 minutes doing, or you're reflecting on your last brilliant interview that went really well, that great job offer you got. So that you're going in with that type of presence and confidence. And also then you've got your STIR method already practiced, and you've got your ethos and your pathos and your logos all in your content too. I hope that answers the question. The second part of your question, you've limited time to share your background. I would if you feel like you've got limited time to do so, what I would do is add nuggets of my background in my different answers. So maybe it's question 4 when they finally learn something about my background, when they finally learn that I used to be an actor, right? But I find a way to fit it in to all of your answers, different parts of your answers. So you don't try to get it all out at once if you feel you've limited time. I hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Karoline. So maybe we will have a few more questions. So Anjuman is asking how to effectively prepare for an impromptu session. So
Great. Yeah. The STIR method.
Again.
Yeah, 100%. Because, in Toastmasters, we often practice these things called table topics at the beginning of Toastmasters, where they say, Karoline, you're up next. Pull a piece of paper up and whatever it says, I have to speak on that topic, even if I don't know about it. Okay, so the STIR method, or maybe the STIR method won't be your favorite choice. Just other methodologies there, like so beginning, a middle, and end. Beginning, a middle, an example, and an end. If you can rely on a method like that you start to know backwards, you know it no matter how nervous you are. You'll be able to talk on a subject. That's definitely what I would choose when you have to speak in an impromptu session. And then being present as well. Respond to what you're getting from, if it happens to be interactive. The best thing you can do is listen to the other person.
Perfect. Thank you. And then we have another question from Francisco. Outside work-related topics, where to find stories to tell? Do you keep like a diary with stories to tell?
Some people do, Francisco. Yes, they do. They keep a story bank. I don't really. I've got every now and again, I might sit down and think of some of the stories that I want to have in my story bank, but I'm just not diligent enough to keep that up. What I try to do, like I was saying earlier, when I'm out running and I've got that headspace, I try to remember some experience from my past that might help with this. It might help you, Francisco, to have 2 or 3, just sit down and journal a little bit and recall those little moments in your life, and I don't think you'll be too surprised at how many start popping back. There'll be loads of them, and then it's up to you whether you're just going to leave them there or if you're going to develop them now so they're ready to go. I'm not that diligent. I've just left them there. They're just sitting there. But then I play with them and play around with them, and I speak them out loud a little bit when I'm out for a run to try and develop them further. That would be my advice.
That's perfect. And can we say, Karoline, the more we practice in our outside work, the better we can get maybe in work-related, environment as well when it comes to storytelling? Should we practice maybe outside work? Because it's less risky,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I would definitely practice in low risk situations. Yeah, especially when you're trying something new, you want to try it. Well, some people, they want to try it with a group who don't know them at all, right? Yeah. And others, they want to try it with people who they feel very comfortable and safe with. But whatever is your low risk environment, definitely practice there. That'd be my advice.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's see if we have any other questions coming from the audience. Sosu is asking, please share some books one can read to improve their storytelling.
I think I saw that one earlier, and I was trying to think. I was what stories can I think of? There's one that I've been meaning to read. I haven't read it yet. It's called The Science of Storytelling. I can't remember the author, but if you Google the science, or wherever you want to do your searching, the science of storytelling, that will come up for you. And there's another book as well called How to Sell, which it's storytelling for salespeople. It's a little bit dated, but so some of the references will be a bit old-fashioned, but the techniques are exactly the same as they ever were, right? So How to Sell is another one. And Talk Like TED is another book I'd also recommend you have a look at.
Perfect. Thank you. We got 3 books.
It just came. See, that's what happens when you're present and you trust that the information will just come out.
Exactly. So I guess we're at time. And then thank you so much for asking all of the questions. And like I'm, thanking the audience. And then thank you so much, Karoline, like being with us and then, just answering all of the questions coming from the audience. Oh, wait. So I actually will squeeze one more question here. Maria is asking, maybe before we say goodbye, we can just cover this one too. Any advice to develop storytelling skills for topics like code for developers? This is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that there has so I don't code, okay? So, and I've never really watched a talk by a coder or a developer, but there has to be some kind of connection. There's to be something that's, I would start with a broad lens, right? A topic that connects you and the listeners. Make it really broad so that you get them all going, oh yeah, that's me, right? You want them to see themselves in you and your content. And then you bring it down into the narrow lens, the tighter focus of whatever your content is. Okay, so you have to hook them in with some kind of connection. And that can be like a very short, it doesn't have to be a story. It could just be like a 2-sentence comment or so that they'll be able to relate to. And then you bring that into a tighter lens then for your content. If you've got a lot of data in what you're sharing, I don't know if you would or not, if there's a huge amount of data, I'd wonder why you're giving a presentation rather than sharing something that would be much easier for people to read in advance. If you can do a bit of both, maybe that's the way to go. But my advice is you must have some broad topic that at least either we universally can relate to, or that people who are developers the majority can all relate to, and then tighten it in to whatever the topic is that you really want to discuss. I hope that helps.
Thank you. And with that said, I will just thank you again, Karoline, for being with us. And then I will say goodbye to you for now. Hopefully you enjoyed the session too.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everyone for all your great questions. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye. And now I would like to welcome our second speaker, Sara, who is a curriculum manager at Google. And then she will be speaking about virtual presentation skills and body language. So welcome, Sara, now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this presentation about presentation skills. I'm really looking forward to spending the next 60 minutes with you as we discuss what you can do to make your presentations more effective and dynamic and engaging. But before we get started, a little bit of background on me. I am a curriculum manager and I work on making products safer through training, teaching people how to... Oh, am I frozen? Oh dear.
Yes, I think you are now frozen. So maybe we can have you rejoin us again. Okay, so thank you for being with us. And then this is like a technical issue. And then meanwhile, we will have Sara again. Okay, she came now. Yes, she looks perfect. Hey, Sara.
Hi. Oh no, did it freeze
no,
again?
This is frozen again. So interesting. This never happened before. And we will see if we can just kind of fix this issue.
Can you at least hear me?
Sorry, once again?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well, but I think you can share your slides and then maybe we can still continue, and maybe at some point we will just have you, moving again. I'm just hoping right now. Meanwhile, we can just look into the issue.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect.
All right. Well, my apologies for the issue today, but let's get started anyway. So my background is in presentation skills related to massage therapy. So I spent a lot of my career doing presentations, teaching people massage. And I got to Google with that skill set and have grown myself to a place where I'm able to share my presentation skills with everyone, both internally and now externally. So as we dive into the contents of today's presentation, I want you to think about what we're going to focus on. So those things being our vocal intention and how we can leverage our voice to make effective presentations, with our body language to really be impactful and make a point. And then interactive things that we can do to help us in the virtual environment to make things a little bit less boring and more engaging for our audience. But before we get started, I want you to think about the next time you have a presentation. If you have one coming up, and if you don't have one coming up, I want you to think about the next time that you are meeting with a group of people, or the next time you're having a one-on-one conversation. And think about how you might implement one of these skills in that environment. Any practice is good practice, and so using those low stakes environments are just as good as in the real deal, in the real thing. So think about that as we go through our presentation today. Also think about who your audience is. If you are talking to a group of peers, if you're talking to just a friend, who are they and what do they need to get out of that conversation? If it's just social, then you know it's social. But if you're trying to influence a group of people to make a decision, then think among that group, who needs to make the decision? Are there folks in the room that don't need to make a decision? And if there are folks who do need to make a decision, focus the message on them. Focus your intentionality towards them. Now, if you're doing a presentation and you're just trying to inform people of a concept, then you really want to make sure that you're inclusive of everyone in the presentation, and you want to be able to focus on a narrative that's understandable to everyone. So think about your next presentation, think about who your audience is, and keep those in mind as we go through these concepts. Okay, so the triangle theory. Before we dive in, I just want to introduce this to you. I presented you with 3 different things that we're going to discuss today. I've told you what they are, and now I'm going to tell you what they are again. And then at the end, I'm going to remind you what I told you. Using this framework is called the triangle theory, and it works really well for presentations. It's based off of a philosophy of Aristotle, and it really does work. It really sets your audience up for success. We use this in training because it's kind of like learning objectives of a training course. You tell them what they're going to be able to do beforehand, and then you give them the training, and at the end you kind of do a key takeaways, and these are the things that you should walk away or step away or move away from this presentation knowing. So using this framework for presentations is great. It also simplifies your message to 3 main topics and provides a mental outline for your audience to kind of follow along and know what to expect. So I've given you that. Hopefully that helps you today as we go through this presentation. But it also helps make things more clear and concise, and reduces the mental work of your audience, which is a huge thing that's actually really beneficial to do. It allows people having to think less overall, which is good in the presentation. I know that sounds wrong, but you want to give them a simplified narrative to walk away from. So, voice and vocal intention. So what is our tone saying about our message? Our tone can say a lot of things. So when I say no, or I say no, those 2 things mean totally different things. And that in a presentation can give away a lot about how you feel about a topic. So if you are trying to convey a message and not insert your opinion yet, making sure that your tone is interesting but not indicative of what you're trying to, how you're feeling about it, can be a tool. But it can also be a tool if you want to share how you feel about something. So let's say you're really excited about a topic, you want to influence people to make a decision about something. You can then use your tone to increase your excitement and animation and reflect that in your words. So think about other people that you've seen on different platforms. If you watch videos, people that you think that are good presenters, and listen to them and think about what their tone is saying about their message. And if the two match, if the words that they're saying and the tone that they're saying match, and then try to practice that on your own. So if someone is trying to convey a very serious topic, they might have a little bit more of a reserved tone and a slower pace, just to really emphasize the points. So that's tone. Now, when it comes to articulation, truth be told, 85% of us have too tight of a jaw. And by having too tight of a jaw, it actually causes us to mumble. So mumbling is common, but prior to a presentation, to avoid this issue or to help it or mitigate it, you can actually stick a stack of paper in between your teeth, or you can do a small cork or something and talk. I know it seems odd, but if you talk for 5 minutes with something in your mouth, it will actually stretch out the jaw muscles in your face and make you articulate better during your presentation. So in the virtual environment, luckily we have this opportunity to do this without anyone watching. But if you're in person, just, do it in a separate room and practice, and you will actually be more clear with your words. Another thing that you can do to couple this is to reduce the pace at which you talk. So I myself am a very fast talker. I get a little bit nervous and then I want to talk a little bit faster. But this is definitely something that we all should work on, to just kind of slow things down and to pause after each sentence. This allows our audience to have to listen a little bit less. I mean, they don't have to work as hard to listen, and they can just focus on what you're saying without trying to keep up with you. So pace is incredibly important. If you think you're speaking too slowly, likely you're doing just right. So keep that in mind. This is always a good reminder in a presentation for me to slow down my pace, because I do this too. But reducing the pace at which you speak is also more inclusive of your audience. Having been someone who has lived in a different language and learned a different language, it was always so much easier for me to be a part of a conversation or to listen and learn when someone spoke slowly. So keep that in mind. Incorporating all of these things at the same time can be really difficult. So during your next presentation, your next conversation, just choose one and really focus on it and hone that skill, and then go to the next one. But remember the trick with the stack of paper. I know it's funny, but it works. Okay, so other things I want to mention here is that studies have shown that if you speak with different tones and you use more inflection in your voice, it actually helps people retain your message up to 10% more. So it actually works. And I want to just encourage you to practice on your own. Practice is great in front of a camera. If you can record yourself on a video call and listen to yourself afterwards, you will gain so much from that experience and learning about the tones and how they sound by doing that practice. I have to say that is probably one of the best tips you can take away from this presentation, is just recording yourself and watching yourself and learning from yourself. Okay. Next is body language. Now, body language says a lot, and you can couple this together with your tone to be really impactful. But you first have to kind of relax and not be nervous. So before we dive into this, it's been about 9 minutes since the beginning of my presentation, and there is a rule in speaking and presenting that every 7 to 10 minutes you need to give your audience a break, or you need to change the subject, or you need to do something to break things up. So I'm going to do that today with you. This is a little bit unconventional, but I encourage you to try it in your next presentation, especially if it's a little bit longer. So we are going to do a stretch break. I wonder if my video is not there. that is going to make things interesting. So perhaps we can just listen to my words and give that a go. Okay, so in this instance, let's see. In this instance, let's have everyone stand up if they have that within their ability. If not, just stay seated, facing towards the camera. And I want you to stick your left arm behind your back so that your arm is completely behind your back and your fingers are pointed towards one of the walls. Okay, and then I'm going to have you drop your shoulder down towards the ground so that your shoulder feels heavy. And then I want you to take your head and tilt it away from that arm. So if your left arm is behind your back, I want you to tilt your head towards the right, just to the side. You're not dropping your head forward. You're not dropping your head backward, just to the side. You should feel a nice stretch in your neck. Okay? Now you're going to hold this for a few seconds. Hopefully you can do this stretch. In this instance, I would say play a video. If you don't want to walk someone through a stretch or your group with a stretch, you can just play a video and have it do it for them. It's a great way to get people moving, get people doing something else so that you can switch to the next topic. I've had lots of professors do this. I really enjoyed it, along with brain exercises. So hopefully you're feeling a stretch in your neck. Apologize if it's uncomfortable, but hopefully it feels good. Okay. So now we are going to switch sides. So I want you to bring that left arm, make it loose, hang it down towards the ground. Take your opposite arm, that right arm, and place it behind your back with your fingers pointed towards the opposite wall there. If your shoulder is heavy towards the ground, just kind of bring it heavily towards the ground. And then in that position, you're going to tilt your head towards the opposite side. So your head is now tilted towards the left. And I apologize that you can't see me here, but you should feel a nice stretch in that side of your neck on that right side. Excellent. Okay. Oh, okay. Now just hold that and breathe. And relax. Okay. Okay, so that was a nice little break in our session. Again, YouTube videos were great for this, but it's really nice just to get up and move in a presentation. And this feeds into my next topic of what is your body saying? And your body says a lot about your words. They reflect each other. And so if you can use your hands to emphasize your words and move them with your words, it really conveys a stronger point. But this can be difficult if you're nervous and you feel a little bit fidgety. And so it's really encouraged. Okay. I think we might need to, okay, sorry. I'm getting some messaging saying that you can hear me still, so that's good. Okay. I'm gonna try something real quick, so maybe you can see me. So I'm gonna see if I can close a tab or two, and maybe that will help you so you can see the rest of my presentation, because the visuals are definitely helpful. As I'm talking about body language, I think it would be appropriate that you can see me. So let's have me try to rejoin if that's okay. And we'll try this.
Definitely. We will wait for you now. Like,
okay,
I know how important this is, like when it comes to body language, topics. So maybe we can have you rejoin and then come back, and then we will continue. And maybe meanwhile, we can do that exercise. You can just.
Okay, sounds amazing. I really appreciate your patience. I'll be right back.
Of course. Yes. And yes, let's just remove her. And hopefully you are all enjoying, the sessions of the Elevate today. And then feel free to check out the next topics on our schedule for next month. I can just give you a sneak peek from even now. Let's see what do we have for next month. So feel free to check out. But okay, we have next month giving and receiving feedback and then work-life balance. So those are the two topics we are going to cover next month. Hopefully we will have you come back, and then the December session will cover thriving in ambiguity and mentoring. So please just check out the agenda and put on your calendar, so that way we will have you coming back for another session. So meanwhile, maybe if you have any questions, you can okay, Sara is back. Hopefully this time it will work. Oh no, you are frozen again.
Oh no, that's
Yeah,
not.
okay, I think we need to continue like this for this session, and we apologize, on the issue. This never happened, which is interesting. Is it Halloween? Because of Halloween? All right, so maybe we can continue, Sara, if you're okay with this.
Yeah, it definitely won't be the same, but I appreciate everyone's patience. You didn't get the stretch, but look up a video and we can go from here on the
Okay.
next couple different topics.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So I just want to share that movement actually helps you become a better presenter. Moving in your presentations is equally as helpful as providing movement to your audience. When I say this, I mean that our bodies will have this nervous response sometimes when we're giving presentations. 10% of us love giving presentations, and 10% of us really don't like it, to the point where we have a physiological response that creates we can't move, essentially. But 80% of us are in the middle, and 80% of us might lose sleep the night before a presentation. We might find it just a little bit more difficult than we'd like it to be, but we get through it and we survive. This is completely natural. This is part of our nervous system's response to what we perceive as danger. But truth be told, that presentations are not danger. They are not something that we need to be fearful of, because the audience is on our side. The audience wants us to succeed. They want us to be successful and happy on our presentation. So this is something that we can actually use to our benefit if we acknowledge this feeling in our body as a tool. So what I mean by that is this nervous response is just a bunch of hormones in our body that are adrenaline, which make us alert, as well as cortisol, which make us nervous and alert. So this combined set of hormones, we can just acknowledge them for what they are, realize that they make us alert, make us more prepared to take on a situation, which they call fight or flight. So you're ready to fight or flight, but we don't need to do those things. We need to instead take that nervous energy and move our body. So move your hands when you're talking, move your feet, sway back and forth, just as if you were in person. It creates a more natural presentation for your audience because it looks like you're in person. But it also helps reduce those anxieties in your body. It helps make you less nervous. And it ultimately is just better experience for everyone. This energy can also be redirected towards making your voice animated and enthusiastic. So if you want to convey that you really are passionate about something, if you're trying to influence somebody on a subject, this is a great time to realize that that energy can be redirected towards that intention, that vocal tone I was talking about. So realize that anxiety in your body is a tool. It's not a threat. And it's literally giving your body a neurochemical bubble bath when you move. Dr. Wendy Suzuki said this, and it's very much the truth. If you just move through that anxiety when you're speaking, it will reduce those hormones in your body, and it will make you feel more natural. It will make you look more natural across the screen. Even if it's just moving your hands, it's an incredibly powerful tool. And it's a great thing to realize, because this is probably one of the hardest things with public speaking or presenting. You want to convey confidence. And so just redirecting that energy will help you focus on what you're saying and doing, making everything a little bit more intentional. Okay, so I'm going to do a little exercise with you on this next slide. I was going to do a little bit of a light show where I show you how bad lighting and good lighting can really help you present in a way that makes you just look really professional. But because we don't have that ability right now, I'm just going to give you some pointers based on this individual in this picture. So this individual has a great body language. She is conveying a very strong message that has open arms, which is inviting, and it makes her seem approachable. The position she is in is great. She's right in front of her laptop. So this is very helpful for having that forward looking camera in front of her. Now, what we could do here to make this a better setup is to elevate that laptop up so that the camera is at eye level with her eyes. Oftentimes our laptop or our computer or even our phone are below us or above us. And this makes it not the best image for your audience. They're either looking up at you or looking down at you. And you really want to replicate that in-person experience by having the camera at eye level. So that's one tip here. The eye direction is good. She's looking at the camera. If I were with you in camera, I would be looking at the camera. I would look away when I'm trying to express a thought, and then I would come back and I would finish my thought looking at you. So it's another great trick you can use when you're in the virtual environment. You have your thought, you express it, you make your point, and then you bring your eye contact back to the camera. Now, looking at the camera for the entire time is also great if you can, but it's more natural to move your eyes around and then redirect. Some other great things that are demonstrated in this picture are the hands and shoulders are in view of the camera. So a thing you can try is to place your laptop or your monitor or your phone or your camera about an arm's length or so away from you. And doing this gives you that space to show your arms and hands if you want to use them to emphasize your points as you speak. This, again, more replicates the in-person experience, and it's very inviting and a good overall picture for your audience. The last thing I want to mention about this picture here is that the lighting is good. The lighting is all around, and so likely there is a very clear image on the screen for the audience. However, if the sun was directly behind the individual here, in that case, it would cast a shadow on the face and it would not be good. So we would want to make sure that if we were outdoors and we were doing natural lighting, that we had the sun in front of us. Now, as we move towards this next slide, what's going on in this picture? Is there anything here? I would love to see in the chat. This is how I'll make it interactive, since I can't show you a whole lot here, but what's good about this individual's setup and what might be improved based on the information that I just shared with you? I'll give everyone a few minutes here, or maybe just a few seconds would be more appropriate. But we've got a different setup. We've got a phone now that's higher up. So this higher up phone has maybe a good line of sight with the eyes. So we have that connecting experience that replicates the in-person experience. Another good thing that we have going on here is that camera eye. Yes, perfect, wonderful. So camera's at eye level. This individual has their arms in the frame, so they can use those to express themselves and emphasize their words. They are looking directly at the camera, which is great. We don't have a clear visual on where the light is coming from, but it does look like it is behind the camera. So that's another great point. The only other thing I want to share about this image is that the camera is to the side. And this is great if the individual is looking at the camera the entire time. But if they are to go back onto their computer and start typing, they're going to get a side profile of their face. And that probably wouldn't happen during a presentation, but if the tendency was to look at the screen for speaker notes or something like that, that might be a little bit distracting. So it would be best to pivot that laptop so it's directly below the camera so that they can have that very engaging forward body language. Okay. Another thing to mention here is that the background is great, but the shirt color and the background are the same. And sometimes when your shirt color and the background are the same color, it doesn't make you pop out from the background, and this can be a little bit distracting because you might blend into the background a little bit. So it's always a good idea to wear a very distinctively different color shirt or top than that of your background, especially in the virtual environment. Okay, so let us move forward with our next slide here. Okay, so how can you engage your audience? This is something that is near and dear to my heart because it is the way that you make your no hand movement. Got it. That's great. Yeah, absolutely. So with engaging our audience, we have a lot of tools available to us now that we've been working in this interesting time of 2000 and 2021. A lot of tools have come out. Things that you can do, again, are those stretch breaks, like I showed you before. But we can also leverage the chat feature, which I have with you today. And this is really, really a great tool. When you are speaking to a group of people and you want to get engagement, you want to get a read of the room, but you're in this virtual environment and you can't see their faces, or maybe you can see their faces on the screen, but they're not always giving you enough of information because maybe they're looking at their email, maybe they're looking at something else, and you can't really truly look at their face and know how they're feeling. You can ask people in the chat with a multiple choice question. You can just do a little bit of a check, how's everyone feeling? Does everyone need a break? If you have a question, maybe ask people to respond in the chat. And this is really helpful to a group of people who might be more comfortable speaking out and maybe not comfortable speaking out. I've been in a lot of presentations that are trying to create a dialogue and discussion where there's a small group of people who don't want to speak up. They're much more comfortable engaging in the chat. And so by asking people to engage in the chat, you're making it more inclusive for everyone to join in on the conversation. And that way everyone is willing to participate. So using the chat is a great tool. Other tools you can use are like learning games and things. There's a lot of tools you can look up on the internet. If you look up learning game tools, those can be used just in presentations to kind of engage people. You can look up different ways to do like icebreaker type questions. I encourage you to explore the internet and find those because there are so many tools, which I won't be sharing today. I'm trying to keep this more of something for you to look at later, but I really love using questions in the ABC format because if you have a group of people who don't want to enter into a dialogue with you in your presentation, you can give them 3 simple answers to choose from, and it doesn't require as much effort for them to start engaging with you and participating. So you could pose a question, do you like sweet or savory? And they could pick A, sweet, B, savory, and just to break the ice to open up a conversation. This technique works really well in lots of instances. Every meeting it seems that I'm in, there's a poll that starts out to just get people talking so that when you require them to talk later after you've given them a bunch of information, that they're more willing to. Another wonderful tool available in Google Meet and other different video conferencing tools are things called breakout rooms. You can basically pair people off into smaller sessions and groups where they can discuss things that you've shared in your presentation together to come back and create a more robust conversation. Using this tool is extremely helpful at getting people to engage. Again, those people who don't want to speak up in a large group, they are much more likely to do this in a breakout room with a smaller group of individuals or even just one individual. So I encourage you to look into breakout rooms and how you might leverage those after a presentation to really create a discussion, because most presentations require some kind of discussion afterwards. Even today we have a discussion afterwards. And so if you don't have anything you want to talk about, having a smaller conversation with a group of peers before coming back to the main group can be incredibly impactful on everyone's understanding and general takeaways from the presentation. All right, so it's been about 7 to 10 minutes. And at this point, I think we're about to go into our discussion. I know we've had some technical issues, so we're a little bit over time, but I want to just close out with saying that be unapologetically you. Today, I have had some issues with my technology and I apologize, and that is embarrassing and uncomfortable, but you know what? I'm here to share with you some information that I think is going to be really impactful and really helpful. And maybe it wasn't the most conventional presentation, and maybe there was some things that went wrong, but I'm here with you, I'm sharing, and I just want you to know that I feel supported by you, my audience, and I want you to know that when you have your next presentation, they are there to support you. They want you to succeed. Even if things go wrong, it's gonna be okay. And this is a true example of that in action. So to sum up before we close into our questions, back to that framework from Aristotle, the triangle theory. You want to tell people what you're going to tell them, then you're going to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you're going to close with the key takeaways of telling them what you told them. And this really helps your audience remember what you want them to understand and take away from the presentation. My goal is for you to take one of these things into your next presentation, your next discussion, your next one-on-one conversation with someone, and just try it out. Try to focus on it. Again, any practice is good practice. I do this all the time, and it really helps make my presentations more concise, more clear, and more engaging. So I appreciate your time today. I'm gonna open it up for questions. And we'll start out with those.
Yes, exactly. So thank you so much, Sarah, for making this happen. Like regardless of the actually like technical issues that we are having right now. So unfortunately, we are not able to fix it for some reason, like with stream that we are using, but that's fine. So like we are going to have some questions from the audience. Meanwhile, again, like I will do the same thing. Oh, actually, you know what? We have one question even coming up now. Francisco is asking, is it better? Sorry. Oh, so I think there's a mix up here, but I will just read it out loud. Francisco is asking, is it better to give presentations standing up or sitting?
I would say if it's within your ability to stand, I recommend standing because it allows you to move and move that nervous energy that you might have about a presentation in a positive way. It also helps replicate the in-person experience. So if you are in a virtual environment, it will feel more authentic, like you're in an actual live presentation if you are standing. And then if you are in person, I think it's a great idea to stand. I think it's just much more engaging and it's more enjoyable for your audience to see movement. The only caveat and the thing that I recommend with standing is that you do move and that you bend your knees a little bit, because if you don't bend your knees, it can cause you to feel a little bit weak in your legs and it can make you feel dizzy. So if you are already feeling a little bit nervous about your presentation, just remember to keep moving, bend your knees. That is the preferred approach.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the answer. And then the next question is, what's your opinion about monotone voice and how to overcome it?
That's a great question. This is something that I would spend some time just sitting down with your presentation, your message that you want to convey, and think about how you feel about it. And what you want the audience to take away from it. And if you feel like your voice is naturally monotone, this might just feel a little bit uncomfortable and inauthentic, but if you can force the feeling you have behind the message into your tone, or maybe look up other people on, say, YouTube. I love looking up people on YouTube to find presenters who are conveying a very specific emotion or message, and using that as my point of reference and then trying to mimic them. It sounds very forced, but it's a great way to learn from others doing the same thing. Or even, voice actors. You can just look up, expressing an emotion of excitement, or expressing or varying your voice, looking for inflection points, trying to just like literally type them into YouTube, and you can find all sorts of things. I think my biggest tool for presentation skills has been watching others. That is the sole reason I'm here today, is being able to listen to others and replicate it. So that is my tip.
Perfect. So, like a follow-up question on that one. So when we are looking up to other people, so it's important to just be authentic of yourself too, right? And then at the same time, we are kind of imitating. Like, how is the balance should be, like Sara over there? What do you think?
That's a very good call out. Being your authentic self is number one. That is the most important thing. You don't want to not be yourself in a presentation, because people aren't going to believe you. You can really tell when someone believes something. So the thing here I would focus on is just trying to just use other people's inflection as a tool, but don't change who you are. If you're gonna feel so forced and feel so unlike yourself, then I would say it's better to be monotone and really believe in your message than trying to replicate someone else's.
Exactly.
So it's a great call out.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We have another question from Francisco. So, by the way, thank you so much for asking these questions, Francisco. So I love these questions. Can you provide ideas of how to have good light conditions inside a room?
Absolutely. I have struggled with this in working on my lighting. So I would say, if you have a window in the room that you're in, I would put your camera in front of the window so that your face can have that natural light on your face. Now, if that's not an option for you, or the setup of your room just doesn't work in that way, I would say that you should definitely avoid having a window to your side and behind you. So if you would go to a place in the room where there is literally none of the light, you can go as far away from the window as you possibly can, and then put a light directly in front of you instead. Do not have a light above you. So if you can avoid a light above you, I'd say go to a different corner of the room. It's better to be in a corner of the room and have the screen light from your computer light up your face than having an external light source reflect a shadow on your face. So if I could summarize that, I'd say sit next to a window. That's number one. Don't sit directly below a light, and put an artificial light in front of you in a darker corner, or just use your screen light in a darker corner so that you don't have external light making shadows.
Thank you for the tips.
Yeah.
Especially these days, like we are all in the virtual, setting right now. So it's important. Perfect. Brad is asking, so what if you are asked to present on a topic you are not an expert in, but want to show confidence, say for an interview, etc.?
Ooh, this is a great question. Let me collect my thoughts here and break down the question. So if it's a topic you're not an expert in, so if it's an interview, I have been given this advice. I very much dislike interviews, and I will sit down at the beginning of my interview and be like, I'm going to take some notes after every question that you've given me so that I can collect my thoughts and I can better answer this question. So if it's a question I'm very unfamiliar with, I'll write down exactly the outline of what they want me to share. And then I will work from there and write down my notes, collect my thoughts. I've never had someone have an issue with me just taking a few minutes at the beginning of a question to respond. It shows that I am putting intention towards it. I'm not just speaking out of nowhere, and I really care about my answer. So this is what I would suggest for an interview specifically. If it's a presentation, and you're not an expert in something and you're supposed to speak to it, it's better just to own up to the fact that you don't have the answer, that you don't know, and you can give your opinion, but it's better to say, I'll follow up on that. Or if you are co-leading a presentation, maybe refer to your colleague. But it's better just to be authentic and say, I don't know, but this is my opinion, or I don't know, and I'll follow up.
Perfect. Thank you. This was great, actually. And then do we have any other questions coming in? So let's wait for a while. And then meanwhile, I can just maybe ask the question that I was meaning to ask for like being on stage, actually. So body language we were speaking about, and then, the tone and things like that. So like when you are like, this was originally for, like your presentation was originally for these virtual, presentations, and then just being on the camera for this, environment. So what would you say for in-person, like kind of, in-person events, to highlight some of the tips and tricks when it comes to body language? Is it the same things, or should we just, kind of differentiate some of the items here when it comes to, like in-person events?
It's a great question. I would say some things apply and some things are different. So when it comes to being in person, instead of looking at the camera, it's best to try to look at your audience. And that can be really hard to look at people in the eyes when you're speaking. I find that intimidating myself. So you can scan the audience. That is probably the best because it's natural. It looks like you're looking at everyone. So that is the best thing you can do, is just constantly scan. If you don't want to look at people's eyes, just look right above their eyes. It looks exactly the same to your audience. No one will know the difference. But just scan. If you find a couple people in the audience that have great reactions to what you're saying and they are really into what you're saying, I'd say look at those people periodically, because I think of those as people who are there to kind of give you an energy boost. Like they're smiling, they're engaged in what you're saying. So consistently look at those people in the audience. When it comes to movement, I would again recommend standing instead of sitting if you have that within your ability. And I would encourage you to do a little bit of walking, a little bit of shifting from side to side. Of course, don't pace, don't take that nervous energy and make it go into a pacing like motion, but just slowly move. It just breaks up the conversation, makes it look a little bit more natural, as if you were having a conversation with someone else.
Perfect. Thank you. So I was waiting for other questions to come while I was asking this question. So we don't have any other questions for you, Sara. And maybe we can just conclude our session for today with Elevate with Google Developers. So thank you so much for joining, Sara, and then giving, like your expertise in body language and then the visual presentations. So, and again, apologies on the technical issue. I wish we could have seen you like, moving and then things like that. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Thank you so much again. And then hopefully you enjoyed the session as well. And I will just say goodbye to the audience, but I can maybe say goodbye to you first.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who hung in there through this session. And yeah, really enjoyed spending my time with everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And with that said, now I am going to conclude our October session with some information. So thank you, everyone, for joining LOA today. And then hope you all enjoyed the sessions. We would like to kindly request from you to fill out the feedback surveys in the follow-up email or the link on the screen, so that we can improve the program along the way. And also, just remember, you are going to obtain a certificate of participation if you fill out the feedback surveys one by one, and then based on the themes that we are providing. So we can just share more details about the certificate if you have any questions. But make sure you fill out all of the sessions feedback surveys, so that way you will just get those certificates along the way. So you can use your hashtag elevate training to share on social media how useful this session was for you. And as I said previously, we are going to have our next session next month, and we will be giving you more information if you signed up on our website already. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at elevate-team@google.com. And we are looking forward to seeing you next month. Till then, take care and then stay safe. Thank you.